Evening. How are we? Glad to be back. We are live, of course, so please do subscribe if you haven't already. I don't know why I'm bright light here, but if I feel like anyway, with this new health kit I'm on. And please share as well. We have got Ashley Balza. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm inspired from your live, and I do have feedback on that as well.
Which one?
The one you did tonight about the day 4.
Oh, okay.
I've got feedback on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll comment it on the live. I'll comment it. We've also got Nick. How are you?
Yes, no, good. I think it's been a challenging week, but good to be on the show and good weekend.
Yeah, we've been in touch non-stop all week, and we've been getting you up. And we've got Dr. Gilly. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy it's Friday.
I'm happy as well. I'm happy. We've also got Robert Brooker from Canada. How are you? So tonight we are going to discuss all things neurodivergent. Now, obviously, I know I've been talking to Gilly about this, about what she'd like to discuss with her being ADHD and a psychologist at the same time. And there's a lot of benefits to it, also struggles, isn't there?
Yes, actually, I'm deciding on a topic for my second book, and it's about what you just mentioned. I know it's kind of like broad, and I'm still trying to specify what I want it to be about, but I'm kind of interested in the benefits and the hidden strengths that are not talked about enough.
Well, maybe this show could inspire you.
It could, yeah.
It
I was
could.
also thinking maybe I could write something smaller, like a blog post or something to begin with.
Absolutely.
But I was,
Yeah. So obviously, I don't know if you Ashley and Nick have picked up on Dr. Gilly's post, because I've been keeping an eye on Instagram and Facebook, and she's been posting about ADHDs, especially about something about you mentioned words in it as well, but I can't think from top of my head. But the misconceptions surrounding ADHD diagnosis.
yes.
So I think we should kick off with what was your life like before you got diagnosed with ADHD?
I think, so I'm a psychologist, and first time I learned about mental disorders or diagnoses was when I was like 18 as a senior. I took AP psychology, and I learned about the different classifications and the symptoms. And so before that, it was like I noticed that I was struggling, but I didn't really have a name for it. And then when I took my psychology class at the same time, I remember it was like junior, senior, students were taking standardized tests. And I remember that many of them did not have an ADHD diagnosis and then suddenly had one when it came time to take the SAT, because they wanted to get, like extended time. And so like the gossip was that they went and they got a diagnosis. How convenient at the time when you need extended time. And I remember thinking like that was stigmatizing. And I felt like I could use extended. I really, really need. I mean, I took the SAT and the ACT. Like I took the SAT 3 times and the ACT 3 times, 6 times, and my score was still not great. I really did. I needed more time. I never finished on time. It was with classwork as well, and the kinds of tests and quizzes that scared me the most were pop quizzes. I was almost never prepared, and I was more afraid of the embarrassment of getting a crazy low score when everyone saw me as this top student, but it felt fake because I worked so hard and so much harder than everyone else. Well, not everyone, but other students I know for a fact, they would tell me, oh, I just studied for 2 days, and I would study for 2 weeks and get a lower score. And it makes you feel like you're stupid when you don't have the right diagnosis or you don't have an explanation for it. So anyway, when I was 18, I took an AP Psych class and was trying to understand myself. And the only diagnosis that kind of fit was generalized anxiety disorder, because it is all about like worry, like your brain is really busy, it's on a lot and you're worried. And I noticed that my brain was on, like there was a lot of activity in there, and it was very distracting to me. It was hard for me to process what I was reading, but I knew I didn't have like a reading disorder because I could read if I had enough time. I understood the information, and it was an area that I could really excel at, but I would run out of time because I had slow processing speed, and I was easily distracted. And it just felt like it didn't really fit, but it was the only diagnosis that kind of fit in terms of like what I thought was wrong with me difficult for me, what my challenge was. And that is the problem that we are still running into. Like, it has not changed a whole lot, because a lot of girls are getting diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, and then they come in to see me for anxiety, and I would say a lot of the time they end up leaving with like an ADHD diagnosis, because I refer them for testing or to consult with a psychiatrist. It's never just I tell them. I want a second opinion, and if it's possible, to get some thorough testing with a psychologist who I give them a few options, but people who I really trust, who I know are good, who will detect it if it's there. But yeah, so I was confused for a long time about it, when I was studying psychology, even as a psychologist, about what my actual diagnosis was. And then when my daughter was born, she had a lot of the obvious characteristics of someone with ADHD. But the thing is that there were things that were also less obvious. Like, she was very emotional and irritable. Like, she was a difficult child. And I hate saying that, but I remember the first day that I got a break for my daughter, and I love her with all my heart, and she's the most amazing child, but I think a lot of parents of kids with ADHD maybe feel this way. But I remember my in-laws took her for a night, and when she was a baby, and I remember like I sat in the tub, and I wanted to call it like a self-care day, and I completely lost it. I started crying like I was decomposing because it was so hard. And there's this temperament element to it too. Like, it's like, your baby's born, and then it's like the ones who are colicky, who don't sleep well, and then that affects parents, and then they often grow up to be like emotional kids. This was, my daughter was the one who had a full-blown like 20 minutes is a long time for a tantrum, but like on the floor in front of everyone, in the middle of the Georgia Aquarium, like in front of the otters exhibit. I will never forget. I am scarred. And the reason she stopped was because I kind of knew what I was doing at that point as a psychologist. It could have gone longer. But yeah, I mean, there was also she's still like this, like, oh my God, like she doesn't stop talking when she's not on her medication.
Do you know what? That's exactly like my daughter as well. She's been diagnosed with anxiety, but we believe she's got ADHD as well, because when it comes to like breakfast time, dinner time, or just throughout the day, nothing, complete silence. But every time at a certain time in the day, and that's about 4 o'clock, 4 in the afternoon, talk. She just doesn't shut up.
Yeah, no, my daughter, it's like, it doesn't matter the time of day, unless she's on medication. But like, yeah, and she, she has like, we have a 4-year-old son too, so she has a brother, and they're like on the same level in terms of like energy, and she's turning 8, and so it's like, and you can see a difference. I remember I was working in a primary care setting, like a pediatrician's office, for one of like my rotations, as an intern when I was still a graduate student. And so I was exposed to a lot of babies. And I remember like sitting there and doing paperwork. I would go in and give the moms, like the new moms, some screeners and see the babies. And I would think, holy shit, like these babies are amazing. Like they're just, I mean, taking my daughter to a doctor's appointment was like it was like a heart attack. And, you know, and to be able to compare, sometimes parents with their first child, like they don't have enough of a sample or exposure to other kids to be able to see like my kid is very different. And the thing is that there are so many strengths, but I think that I was better able to see those strengths like once we started to get her on medication and once I better understood her, you know, through my own self-education of ADHD. But yeah, I think it's deeply misunderstood. It was a long journey for me when, you know, and then when she was born, I remember, and she grew up, you know, a few years, my husband also like was under the impression, he's like, she has got to have ADHD. And then he would say like, I wonder where she gets it from. And I would say me, like, because I would keep making comments like, I think I have ADHD, you know, and people they wouldn't really take it seriously because they don't really understand ADHD in women, yes. You know, like and it has a lot to do with mood too, which is what my book is about. It's about emotional dysregulation as a part of ADHD. And it's not something that I'm pulling out of thin air. You know, this is, you know, Dr. Russell Barkley, who's a lead expert in the field of ADHD, has been arguing for years that emotional dysregulation should be included in ADHD criteria, but it still isn't.
Okay. Yeah. Obviously, before we get Nick and Ashley's intake, I've just noticed, because I weren't just stalking your profile, Gilly, because getting some intake on what we could talk about as well, because you've been posting a lot about ADHD. A lot. I know when I upload the YouTube shorts after this, we are going to hit over 1,000 videos. Over 1,000. So, yeah, spotlight for you, Gilly.
Mm-hmm. Nice, cool. Yeah. I mean, my book is about ADHD. And also, like, you know, I specialize, and it's not really just ADHD. Like, I really started with autism. And so it's more neurodiversity. It says ADHD specialist on my Instagram page because neurodiversity did not fit. And if I wrote ND, like people might not know what that means. Yeah. So, but it's more than ADHD. Yeah, it's just.
So what do you think, Ashley, Nick?
Yeah, I think one thing I'm sort of picking up on is about how sort of diagnosing, if that's the right word, people. So I think you said, you know, yourself, Dr. Gilly, with, you know, before you knew your ADHD, you knew that you had some challenges around, you know, with your exams and things, and it was, and then it wasn't until you got diagnosed later on that you knew that explained. Well, I don't know if I'm quite getting it right, you know, but that's why you sort of, you know, struggled to perhaps focus certain ways. I know Andy said it. Adam said it with his own children. And I think that's a big thing, because I mean, I've got dyspraxia, and that's on, I think it's on this spectrum. And so when I was younger, you know, dyspraxia is two elements. As a sort of physical coordination tends to be a bit off. You can be quite clumsy, and then also the way your brain processes and organizes information. So it can have an impact on, you know, particularly when you're young, with a social adaptation, because your brain. So when I was young, I struggled to sort of form friendships easily. I was very clumsy in very one sports, and I had lots of labels and struggled in school. But it wasn't until I was in my 20s when I was then diagnosed with dyspraxia, which explained everything and made it a lot easier. Then I knew that was why and how to. So I guess yeah, this whole thing of, you know, the process of diagnosis with you, Dr. Gilly, did you you know, how, because obviously you, with what you do in your work, you got that experience from having ADHD yourself. Do you think that's you know, that's something that, you know, you know, that obviously helps you? You know, helps you find the right thing with what you do. And I just want, you know, find the thing of, there's so much misdiagnosis. What do you think about that? You know, that you know, this problem that people aren't being diagnosed effectively if they've got a neurodiverse something, you know, on the neurodiverse scale, and they're just not getting diagnosed or getting diagnosed wrongly. Or, you know, what's I guess, you know, because it isn't. I'm aware of, sorry, to the last point was, because I'm aware in the schools work I do that for children to be diagnosed, they have to have a assessment, which can be a hard process, then get a report, and then that then there's a whole process. Then it gets recommendation before they can get support. And if they're not diagnosed or have the assessment, they don't get the support they need. So it's a real, and something can go around circles. So yeah, what do you think that the diagnosis problem is something that will?
Yeah. So I think in terms of like, how did I choose that niche? I think it was like self-selection because
Sure.
and I think a lot of things in life are kind of synchronous, right? It's like you learn about something or you encounter something, and then it sort of like chases you later in life,
Yeah.
where things just kind of connect in a way that I think is interesting and it makes sense for a lot of people in terms of their hobbies, their careers, and just life experiences. And I think that was true for me because I didn't, with psychologists, like I took that AP Psych class, and it's not like I walked out and was like, I'm going to specialize in ADHD and autism. Like that wasn't really it. I didn't really have an idea. I know I wanted to work mostly with kids because I had done like tutoring and camps, like summer camps. And then in college, I was also doing tutoring in like kindergarten, and I loved working with kids. It made me really happy. So I know I wanted to specialize in youth. But then beyond that, it's not like I had an idea of where I wanted to move. But then when I was 19, like 18, 19, was around the time that I read the book, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon.
Great book.
And have you read it?
I have. Yeah, I've read it and seen the play of it as well. So yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I still love that book. In fact, actually, the back of my book is modeled off of that book, Mark Haddon, because I just had it on my bookshelf and I love it. But anyway, that book is written from the point of view, it's fiction, but it's written from the point of view of a boy who's autistic. And so I read that at the same time that it was through like a family connection. They said to me, like, would you be interested in doing like a summer teaching position at a school for autistic kids? And I was like, okay. So I did that for a summer and I absolutely fell in love with these kids. Like I knew I loved working with kids before, but these kids were exceptional. And I remember like some of them really needed a lot of support. I was like changing 1 6-year-old's diapers and I was 18, 19, which is strange for someone who's that young. But I almost didn't even mind. Like I've been bitten, and the thing is that like, it's like it's sensory, and then kids who are autistic, like they get sensorially overwhelmed. It's nothing personal, but I recognized also some really cool things about the echolalia and the stimming, how the pitch was always perfect. Like they could literally imitate a voice or a scene to a T. It's amazing. And I had never experienced that before. Or some things that they did, I just thought were funny. Like there was this one kid who I remember I would sit next to him and he did this thing where he would take his fingers and go to my eyes.
Sure.
And it's like, exactly. Yeah. And so I would respond by like opening my eyes and moving away. And most people would find that very irritating. And it was pretty irritating, but I just thought it was interesting that he thought he just like found it so, I guess, like reassuring, because when you're struggling to connect with people in your environment, you try to find a way that's like a form of consistency, right? Like if I do this, people respond in this way. And so there were just, I don't know, I loved that experience. And so from there, then I became like more interested, and it started more as like research on like friendship and social withdrawal, like the kids who kind of stay out of social groups. And so my research focused more on like peer relationships and, social anxiety and things like that. And then when I started having clients, I would request the clients who struggled with like social anxiety who were autistic. And that's kind of where it began. And then meanwhile, like there's a lot of overlap between autism and ADHD. I was doing testing. And so I ended up getting a lot of testing clients like with ADHD. And, so that's how it happened. It was like self-selection. I felt like, I don't know, I understood them. and I don't know, like a lot of like the way that, they thought, the kids with ADHD and the ones who were autistic, like the things they did, it just clicked. Like it just made sense to me. And,
Sure.
and yeah, I find that's that's even true now. If anything, I think I relate even better and I have better relationships in my therapy relationships than in real life, because I often feel misunderstood, and then that can lead to being judged and disliked. Whereas like when we find each other and work together, it works, and I feel like I could really help them.
I guess you got sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, I guess you got that, the rapport, because you got, the because obviously you're well qualified. You've got the experience, of having ADHD yourself, so it brings that rapport, of when you connect. So as a saying, people like themselves. We automatically connect to people who we always subconsciously have similarities in. That's the people we're drawn to. So I guess that's something that helps you have rapport. And I think a lot of us people I meet in schools who are assess people or work closely one-to-one, maybe behavioural psychologists with children who have on neurodivergent. I find they're qualified. They've done they've got the they're qualified doctor or done a PhD the degree in PhD, but they lack obviously any they're not obviously, because they're not neurodivergent themselves. They obviously getting that sort of natural rapport, and sometimes I think it's just lacking, because there's one thing having the qualification and the skills through study, but I think sometimes it's that extra element.
Yeah, so obviously before we move on to, because while you and Nick were talking, obviously I want to hear Ashley as well. I've been stalking your Facebook and I've picked some areas of what I think we should talk about as well. But first, couple of questions. Dr. Gilly, do you think ADHD is generational and there is evidence to show that it is?
Yeah, it's genetic. So there's like heritability studies showing like an 80% heritability for ADHD. And the way that that's studied is either through like studies of actual like genes, or researchers will look at like identical twins, because identical twins share 100% of their genes, and then they compare identical twins to fraternal twins that share 50% of their genes, and that's how they come up with these estimates of how heritable certain disorders are, and ADHD is like really, really, really heritable.
Yeah. So go on, Ashley.
Okay. I'm listening, but do you find that obviously, like boys, right? Boys have energy. And obviously we know that schools aren't necessarily built for boys. Like the sit still, comply, don't, squirrel around, be quiet, all of the things. But what degree of that is boy energy, and what degree of that is potential ADHD? Because you could have a kid that is just literally bored, doesn't want to sit still, and if you give them something that they're interested in, where they can focus, and then it's like a different switch, versus like school and they're be quiet. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not designed for boy.
Yeah. So if we're talking about boys, actually, and let's say you're a parent and you're wondering whether your son has ADHD, then it's going to be smooth sailing for you, because the criteria were developed on mostly, well, it depends what your cultural background is, but mostly white boys. And so the questionnaires and the assessment materials and the way that psychologists are trained is like perfect for a white boy. And the reason for that is because when you develop questionnaires and measures, you usually develop it based on the criteria. And if the criteria are based on mostly boys, then the questionnaires also reflect criteria that were written for boys. And then they're age specific. So if you have an 8-year-old, then your 8-year-old's boy's score will be compared to other similar boys, like in his age group. And if he is like, you know, not within the mean, or he's like significantly more in those behaviors, then he might meet criteria for ADHD, because it's not just questionnaires. But I guess what I'm saying is that, like, when you have someone assessed, their scores are compared, and it's a child, their scores are compared to other similar like age mates. So that's how you would know.
Okay. All right. Obviously, I know Kerry put, for a child to be diagnosed, it's a long process. Does the stress hit the parents more after the diagnosis, or is it the waiting to be diagnosis? When does the stress hit?
Oh, you're saying when is it stressful for parents, before the diagnosis or after?
Oh, I know it's always stressed. I know parents are always stressed. I'm sure I am. But yeah, when is the most stressful time?
Stress. Yeah, before the diagnosis. At least that's what I see, like in my practice. And I think it's the most stressful one. That's when they come in for therapy, before the diagnosis. And also because I really think it has a lot to do with misunderstanding your kid, and maybe even misunderstanding yourself, because it's heritable, right? So a lot of times, like, parents will bring their kids and they don't have an ADHD diagnosis. And then, you know, I recommend either autism or ADHD testing, or both, you know, for their kid. And then I don't always bring it up, because the parent's not my client, but they sometimes will make comments to me, and that's like a door for me. Like, sometimes it's like a foot in the door. So sometimes they'll make comments like, you know, I've seen similar traits or, you know, behaviors or challenges for myself, and I've thought about it. And then I might say something like, you know, I've noticed something similar, and it could be something that you could explore. You know, it's highly heritable. Yeah, but I think that the stress is more before the diagnosis, because parents think like either they're doing something wrong, they blame themselves, or they blame their kid, and they basically think their kid is bratty, or like they have, you know, a bad apple, or why can't my kid just listen to me? It might not even be blaming themselves or blaming the kid, but they just feel exasperated. And then once, you know, they're clearer on the diagnosis, they understand that it's a difference in wiring of your brain, then it becomes a lot less about blaming anyone. It just is what it is. And then how do you work with your kid to help them succeed?
Absolutely. And I think that's what Tammy's...
I've got a question, Gilly. So,
yeah, I think that's what Tammy was saying, because she put, there is no blood test to diagnose, and there are so many different factors and variables that have to be ruled out, like trauma, some characteristics, different causes.
Yeah, you're not going to get me enthusiastically talking about trauma as a cause. I think trauma is it can exacerbate ADHD symptoms, but, you know, if we're talking about ADHD as a brain-based condition and it's just a different way of thinking, then it makes more sense that the ADHD came first, especially if it's heritable. Like, how do you explain the 80% heritability rate and then say it was caused by trauma?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to pick on Kerry's latest comment. And this comes to the next topic. And I know Ashley's going to go on a rant about this, because I know her. Overwhelming and burnout. Now, obviously, I don't know. I'm not the type to go political, because I hate politics. But recent studies, Donald Trump came out and said autism is caused by paracetamol. So, actually already.
Yeah.
So, does that become a major trigger to people, or can it be really overwhelming? That can lead to burnout.
Oh, okay. You're saying does hearing him talking about Tylenol causing autism and ADHD? Does it lead to stress?
I know 100% paracetamol is not. It doesn't cause autism. I know that for a fact.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
right. I mean,
It's all the bollocks.
It is bollocks.
It is. It is.
It's bollocks. Yeah.
Come on, Ashley, please talk. I've got a silence. I've got a quiet.
I feel like I should really plead the fifth on this one, but you have to look at. You are opening a can of worms, and you don't.
Ashley, do you want me to jump in, and then when you're ready?
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, whoever's listening who's like not aware, the reason we're all laughing is because it's oversimplified to say that taking Tylenol in pregnancy produces autism and or ADHD. There's some research showing a correlation in that moms who took Tylenol, who's paracetamol, I don't know how to pronounce it. The generic in the UK. But moms who took Tylenol when they were pregnant also had or tended to have children who are neurodivergent. But the problem with most of the research that does show that there's an association is that it doesn't account for genetics, which is what I mentioned before. So they don't account for whether the mom also has ADHD and or is autistic. There's like, I think at least one study looking at siblings, and when they accounted for whether the sibling was neurodivergent, then the association between the Tylenol and the neurodiversity went away. Meaning that when you account for some genetic influence, Tylenol does not seem to be associated with neurodiversity. And that was just siblings. They haven't even really looked at or accounted for, the moms. And we know that it's highly heritable. So it's just that autistic moms have autistic kids, or ADHD moms have autistic kids even, because there's a lot of, overlap. The other thing that hasn't been considered is that people who are neurodivergent tend to be more sensitive, just like sensorially. And then also they tend to struggle more with pain. So like, for example, me, I have a long history of struggling with migraine. And then I also am very sensitive. Like I get tummy aches a lot and I just like feel fatigued a lot. And that's very common for women who are neurodivergent. And so we just tend to take painkillers more, or like, what's it called? Like Tylenol or ibuprofen. And the problem for me was that because I have a history of migraine, I couldn't really take, at the time I was taking triptans when I was pregnant. And that was a huge risk, when you were pregnant to take a triptan. And so maybe I took like half of one during the course of my entire pregnancy. But then I was trying to kill my headaches with Tylenol. And that's because there's co-occurrence between chronic pain and having ADHD or being autistic. And so you're more likely to find that we take Tylenol, but also you're more likely to find that we have neurodivergent kids because we are neurodivergent. And then our kids also have chronic pain. And it's just like, should we just not exist? I disagree with that because of what we said before, because there's a lot of strengths associated with it too, and we're still here for a reason. But yeah, and now Ashley, you go.
I still don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
So are you saying, Ashley, I have got you silenced?
I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. Not here.
I'll say that as a yes then. I'll take that as a yes.
We'll have a conversation later, okay?
Okay, we'll have a conversation.
Okay, so here's the thing. I disagree. I'm not saying that Tylenol is the single cause, but there are studies to show the effects of Tylenol and how kids end up diagnosed with ADHD or even autism. Trump was simply quoting a Johns Hopkins study about Tylenol and how Tylenol depletes the glutathione in the body, which opens up the blood-brain barrier pathways into the brain, and then associating it with the vaccine stuff. That's all I'm going to say. So it really requires a lot of digging into all of the medical literature and whatever, and studies done way back in even 2019. So that's all I'm going to say with that. And I'm done. Okay, move on to the next question.
I think just to add my sort of comments, I think there's a big difference between something contributing to an increased chance of something happening, and a lot of things, a lot of medicines, we take, if you take them, can increase a chance to some level or something, or getting some effect, but it doesn't mean, but to say it causes it is a big leap there. And I think that's the I think the controversy is say some tiny or whatever causes.
You also have to factor in the fact of the media and how they love to spin any sort of press conference or any sort of whatever when they come out.
Right, come on, guys, come on, let's move on from the media and the political.
Well, you open the can of worms, my friend. You open the can of worms. So
it's the chicken and the egg. That's what I was saying about me taking Tylenol when I was pregnant. It's a chicken and the egg. Is it that Tylenol causes autism, or is it that autism causes Tylenol use? That's what I was saying. Like if you have ADHD or autism and you're a mom, you're more likely to use
cause and effect. Yeah.
Something like Tylenol. It's correlational. That's what I'm saying. What came first? Being autistic and then having to take Tylenol because you have chronic pain, and then without controlling for the parents' neurodiversity, you can't say anything. You can't even say that it contributes. You can't.
I think I agree that it's easy to say something is a cause and this is the effect, but actually look at the bigger picture. I think there's a wider thing. Actually, the effect is because of. It's not as simple. I think it's holistic to draw that conclusion. We're like, Tylenol causes this. This is a cause of the effect, but actually, like you say, it's more likely to take this because of this effect. I think sometimes the cause and effect, people say it's a linear one, or only go this way, is this cause this, but actually I think often the reason for having the effect is because of the effect rather than just the cause, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, the next one is opportunities. Now, I know a lot of, let's say, I actually believe I've got ADHD, but I've never been diagnosed or assessed or anything like that. I'm just, one of them. But they get overwhelmed a lot, don't they? People with any sort of neurodivergent condition, they get overwhelmed a lot. So, do they put off opportunities or not?
Can you repeat the last bit? Do they put up opportunities?
Thank you.
Do people with... Oh, I can't believe I'm being all robotic. Thanks, Ashley, for talking politics. But anyway.
You started it.
I think Kerry did. I'm innocent. She put the comment in. I didn't. But no, what I'm saying is people with a neurodivergent condition, whether it's autism, ADHD, dyspraxia, whatever, do they try and find a reason or an excuse not to jump at any opportunity that comes in front of them?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, Nick, did you have an answer?
He's thinking.
I know, I don't want to interrupt.
It is, yes. Who was answering? Were you answering, Dilly?
I was asking if you had an answer because you looked like you were about to answer, and I didn't want to talk over you.
Talking to me?
Yes. Thank you, Ashley.
Sorry, no. So everything's a bit stilted. It's freezing. No, I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't. I think it's an interesting question, isn't it? Do our labels, do we find comfort in labels, and does it give us, sometimes I think, If we're out of our comfort zone, can we retreat into, well, I'm doing this because I've got this condition, that's why I can't do it. I mean, I've only got personal experience, obviously, of dyspraxia, and I mean, I used to retreat from a lot of situations I didn't feel comfortable, but then, you know, that could be explained by dyspraxia later on, you know, because I struggled with a lot of social relationships, the way my mind process things. But I don't think, you know, with particularly just my own experiences, I think the label came later when I was retreating, but it's an interesting question. Yeah, I do. I think it must be in some cases, surely, yeah, as Adam said, that some people do say, well, I can't do this thing, you know, I can't take this opportunity because of my, you know, it's going to be too hard for my condition, I think. But yeah, what do you think?
It's a brilliant
Dr.
question,
Gilly?
isn't it? It's a brilliant question.
It's a good question, yeah.
What do you think, Ashley? And nothing political,
What do you think, Dr. Gilly?
please.
Do you think, in your experience, do you yourself, have you ever chose not?
Okay, so you're thinking, well, I'm just trying to formulate in my head, okay? So essentially you're asking, like, is there opportunities that they don't take or they do take?
No, all I'm asking is, obviously, we all have opportunities in our lives on a daily basis. Do people with neurodivergent condition, whether it's autism, dyspraxia, dyslexia, you name it, do they look for any excuse not to jump at that opportunity, or do they actually take them?
I think it really depends but what mentality they're living in. Because I have a friend whose husband happens to be dyslexic, and he won't necessarily go into like men's groups or anything like that may reveal his disability. So he has an opportunity to surround himself with other men and whatever, but at the same time, I think there's that, like, what if they find out? Will I get made fun of? You know, like, even as an adult, because it's an embarrassment, maybe they feel shame or something along those lines. So I think it really depends on the person. Some people might want to take those opportunities, but then when they do, maybe there isn't the additional support that they need. So I think it really depends.
What do you think, Gilly, from your experience?
Sorry, you can hear me, guys. You can hear me, right? I was just laughing because I realized how appropriate my chicken and egg analogy was. Because the mom is the chicken and she has an egg. All right, but moving on. So I think do people who are neurodivergent avoid certain opportunities? So the first place my head went was RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is basically, that was the main inspiration of my book. And for those who don't know, RSD is a group of symptoms that was initially kind of described by William Dodson. He's a psychiatrist. And so he says that he learned about this concept through a topic that was tied to atypical depression. And then he noticed this tendency of his clients with ADHD to be especially sensitive to perceived or actual criticism or rejection from others. And so one of the characteristics or the way that people with RSD respond is through avoidance. And that's because people with ADHD, people who are neurodivergent in general, experience real life rejection more often than people who are neurotypical. because they think differently, they communicate differently, they have different challenges and different strengths. And so they're misunderstood. And like we were saying before, right, birds of a feather flock together. People like other people who are similar to them. And if you're different, people are more likely to dislike you or not want to associate with you. And so there are real experiences of rejection. And then it sort of becomes habitual, where you sort of expect to be rejected. And so for me, that surfaced as like, if I had a professor or a teacher tell me like, Gilly, can we talk after class? Immediately it was like, oh, I fucked up, and this is going to be bad. Whereas for someone else, it might be, maybe I got a good grade. Maybe I got an award. Maybe she's going to just tell me that my mom is picking me up early or something neutral, But for someone who struggles with RSD, it would go immediately to the worst case scenario. And so, yeah, people who are neurodivergent may be more likely to miss out on opportunities because they expect to fail. And then that's unfortunate because then they're not giving themselves enough of a sample of experiences where they might think they're going to fail, but then they actually end up succeeding.
Okay. So next one, and this is for everybody as well. Self-care living with NEURO-DIVERGENT. Do they avoid that? Self-care, self-love?
I think the self-love, probably. I don't know if they actively avoid it. Like, I don't think they're doing it on purpose. But I think there's, at the beginning, especially when I have people coming in for therapy, like their self-compassion is very low.
Yeah. Have you, I don't know what's going on with Nick. Have you always loved yourself, or has there been a time in your life where you thought, I don't like myself here? Like low self-esteem?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I bet that can be a big trigger. Come on, Ashley, you're the self-care mama. Help me here.
You're the self-care mama. Come on.
Exactly.
Well, and things to keep in mind though, as far as like, not all self-care is a one-size-fits-all. And that's no different than if you're neurodivergent or you're not. Whether you've got ADHD, autism, it doesn't matter. You can't one-size-fits-all self-care. So if I tell you, Adam, okay, set a 10-minute timer for self-care, that might work for you, but then somebody else is like, I don't do well with timers, right? So, writing Post-it notes to yourself might work for you, but that doesn't work for somebody else.
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily one size fits all a self-care routine or just anything like that, because a lot of times with neurodivergence, you can be hypersensitive. So anything that changes can throw you for a loop. So like rigidity schedules don't work. There needs to be more flexibility. Or if you're too flexible, then maybe you need more rigid, like rigid scheduling, because scheduling is like your lifeline, right? But having that flexibility as well is something that can also help. So it really depends on the person. If they're okay with ebbs and flows and having a little more lax of a routine, then, doing specific activities like, okay, today I'm just going to pick what I want to do. I want to take a bubble bath, right? Or it's no, this time, every single day, this is what I do. So it really depends. You can't one size fits all self-care for everybody. And I don't even do that with my clients, because I often tell them, this is what I want you to do. If you don't know where to begin, or you don't know how to create that routine, okay, well, today, let's try on this outfit If it doesn't work, let's put that one back because that one's not for me. It doesn't fit right. It's too tight. It's just not going to work. So then, okay, go to your closet, take another outfit, try that one on and see, okay, yeah, I really do enjoy journaling. I'm going to add this to my self-care routine. Or I really enjoy doing this activity, going for a walk for 15 minutes. I'm going to add that into my routine. So it really just depends on the person.
Yeah, absolutely. Nikki, all right?
I think his internet's wonky.
Yeah. And we played
Right.
musical chairs too, because he was here and now I'm here.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, have to just stay where we are.
Internet connection's a bit dodgy.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're there, Nick. We can hear you and see you.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, yeah.
So what's your feedback on what you've heard so far?
On the self-care aspect, just to say, well, just maybe go back to the opportunity point, because I know some people who through the schools who are a bit older, they're sort of teens who have ADHD, and I noticed that when they're offered opportunities to get involved in certain things, certain activities, they will often want to take part if they see obviously the benefit of it, but they'll want to obviously see certain conditions in place so that it's not so that they can feel comfortable feel comfortable participating. So I think it's I mean, it's sort of human nature, isn't it? We'll get out to take a risk, get out of comfort zone to take advantage of an opportunity. But at the same time, if you know certain things are certain aspects of it will stress you out or not fit your who you are as a person. Maybe in a way you can manage that. And I've noticed, that that's for example, if whether I don't know, try an example, but if the amount of people in the room or the sound, if that was going to be quite hard for someone who's neurodivergent to cope with, whether that aspect could be adapted, then they could be run slightly differently. Then that opportunity still be there to take part, but it wouldn't be challenging for the certain aspects. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, obviously. I want to thank everyone for being here. I think this has been a fantastic show. I really do. But any final words or something like that? That may be experiencing low self-esteem after being diagnosed. Maybe, I don't know.
I'll just give my final words. I mean, so with me, my direct experience is obviously from my schoolwork, but also my, having dyspraxia. And for me, when I did get diagnosed, I did think, well, that explains it. That did explain that, the things I struggled with at school. And, I felt I was different in certain ways, and it did affect my confidence. I just struggled in the way I thought, and it affected my relationships with other children and learning in class. I couldn't understand it, and it really got me down. But when I had the diagnosis, I did think, okay, well, that makes sense, that explains it. But I think there can be comfort in having the right diagnosis, because then also get the support you need. That's just my last words.
Yeah. Go on, Gilly.
I need to head out, so I'll just say that if you are neurodivergent, I think it's a beautiful thing. I love my brain. I wouldn't change it for anything. I think we have a lot of strengths, and being different is not bad. There's a reason that there are differences among people. And so, just I think learning to love yourself is a really important part of getting a diagnosis and getting help. But was a good episode. I hope everyone has a nice weekend.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, well, I'll be sharing all this over the weekend, and I think that's a brilliant way to end it off when it comes to self-love, because that's exactly what we're going to be discussing next week, Ashley and Nick, where we're discussing on how do you truly define self-love, and that is next week. Obviously, we've got a couple of guests on for that one. And same time next week. So please do, everybody, share this, subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you next week. So Ashley, don't go anywhere because I really want to hear what you have to say. So I'll see you later.